It was dawn on the 10th of July, 1943, near the Sicilian Hilton of Gela. The air, thick with the smell of dust, salt and cordite, carried the echoes of the largest amphibious invasion in history, Operation Husky, now 2 days old. On a narrow, rock-strewn ridge known as Piano Lupo, a lone American M3 Stuart light tank, part of the 2nd Battalion, 13th Armored Regiment of the 1st Armored Division, sat motionless, its engines silent. Its commander, Staff Sergeant James "Jim" Hinson, a 24-year-old from Tennessee, rubbed grit from his eyes as he scanned the inland road winding through the olive groves below. His tank, serial number 301,987, was not where it was supposed to be. Separated from its platoon in the chaos of the landing and a series of sharp, confused engagements with German reconnaissance units, Hinson and his crew, Driver Private Frank Chick Siccone, Gunner Corporal Leo Pappy Holloway, and Loader Private Sam Crittenden, had been ordered to hold this observation post. Their mission was to watch for counterattacks from the direction of the airfield at Ponte Olivo. They were to report, not engage. Their tank, nicknamed Hinson's Hassel in chalk on its turret, was a light tank, a honey to the British who first used it. It weighed 14 tons. Its main armament was a 37 mm6 gun, a weapon already known to its crews as a squirrel rifle for its pathetic effect against German armor. That morning, what came up the road was not a patrol. It was the spearhead of the entire Hermann Göring Panzer Division, ordered by Field Marshal Kesselring to throw the Allies back into the sea. Leading the column were Panzer IV Orff G tanks, each weighing 25 tons, each armed with a long-barreled 75 mkw K40 gun that could punch through over 80 of armor at 1,000 yards. The Stuart's frontal armor was 38 m thick. The math was not encouraging. The fight that began at 06:17 that morning would not be decided by math, but by terrain, nerve, and a crew's refusal to die in the wrong place. The first sighting was a glint of early sun on glass, then another, then the distinct, low-slung silhouettes of armored vehicles emerging from the morning haze, moving slowly but deliberately along the Via di Casa. Hinson, standing in the open commander's hatch, felt his stomach tighten. He counted 5, 10, 15, a full company interspersed with grenadiers in half-tracks. He grabbed the radio handset. Kingfish Base, this is Spotter 1. Multiple enemy armor, repeat, multiple enemy armor, moving east on primary road grid. The transmission dissolved into static. He tried again. Nothing. The ridge's geography or German jamming had cut them off. They were alone with the information. Chick, keep her running but quiet. Pappy, lay on the lead vehicle. Sam, load he. Let's see if we can get their attention, make 'em think there's more of us. Hinson's voice was calm, a flat Tennessee drawl that belied the adrenaline. The order was a staggering act of aggression. A 37 high-explosive shell against a Panzer IV's frontal armor would do little more than scratch the paint and announce their position with brilliant finality. But Hinson had seen the lay of the land. The road below snaked along a defile with steep, rocky banks. The lead German tanks were channelized, their fields of fire limited by the terrain. His Stuart, perched on the reverse slope of Piano Lupo, was hull down. Only its turret, the smallest target, was visible. It was a perfect defensive position if one had a weapon that could defend it. The 37 gun barked, the sound sharp and high-pitched compared to the deeper roar of German cannons they'd heard the previous day. The shell struck the lead Panzer IV on the glacis plate in a flash of yellow and gray smoke. As predicted, it did no visible damage, but it did exactly what Hinson hoped. It confused and stopped the column. The lead tank halted. Hatches popped open. German commanders, believing they had encountered a forward outpost of the main Allied line, scanned the ridge for targets. They saw only dust from the shot and rock. They did not immediately see the well-camouflaged Stuart. Load AP, Pappy, same target, driver's view slit. Holloway, a taciturn Oklahoman, nodded, his eye already welded to the M1 telescopic sight. The standard M51 armor-piercing shot was their only hope. It could, theoretically, penetrate the thinner side armor of a Panzer IV at close range or a vision port. It was a sniper's shot. The tank rocked with the recoil. This time the result was different. A spark, then a gout of flame from the Panzer IV's open commander's cupola. The HE shell had likely blinded the crew or caused spalling. The AP round had found a lucky seam. The tank brewed up, ammunition cooking off with pops and bangs. The German column, now alert and angry, erupted into action. Machine gun fire from the half-tracks and secondary tanks whipped across the ridge, pinging off rocks and chewing the dirt around the Stuart. A 75 round from the 2nd Panzers screamed overhead, missing the turret by feet and exploding in a deafening crash on the reverse slope. Back us down 10 yards, now," Hinson yelled. Sickon threw the tank into reverse, the tracks scrambling on the rocky ground. They slid backward, disappearing completely from the enemy's view. This was the second part of Hinson's desperate tactic: shoot, scoot, and reposition. The rocky ridge offered a dozen such hull-down positions. They were not fighting a tank duel. They were conducting guerrilla warfare with an armored vehicle. For the next hour, this deadly game of whack-a-mole continued. The German commander, now fully deployed off the road and trying to flank the ridge, was infuriated. He was being delayed, harassed, and had lost a tank to what he believed was a hidden anti-tank gun position. He could not bring his numerical superiority to bear because the terrain funneled his forces into narrow approaches, each covered by the Stuart's 37 gun from a new, unexpected angle. Hinson's crew worked with mechanical precision born of terror. Crittenden loaded AP and he in a blur, his hands black with powder residue. Holloway fired, his shots aimed at tracks, road wheels, and vision blocks, not to kill, but to cripple and blind. Sickon navigated the treacherous slope by instinct, moving on Hinson's terse commands. By 08:30, the Stuart had claimed a second victim. A Panzer IV, attempting to climb a goat path to outflank the ridge, had exposed its thin belly armor as it crested a rise. Holloway's single AP round punched through, igniting fuel. The tank slewed sideways and blocked the path. The German infantry, dismounted and now advancing under supporting fire, began to probe up the slope. Hinson, manning the turret-mounted .30 caliber machine gun, hosed down their approaches, forcing them to cover. The air inside the Stuart was now an oven, reeking of sweat, cordite, and hot metal. The crew's ears rang from the constant concussions. The Germans adapted. They brought forward their infantry guns, lightweight 75mm IG-18s. High-explosive shells began to rain on the ridge, not aimed at the tank, but at the general area, trying to blast apart its cover with sheer volume of fire. Shrapnel rang against the Stuart's hull like a demonic hail. A near miss showered the tank with rocks and dirt, temporarily blinding Sickon. They moved again, tracks screeching in protest. At 11:00, catastrophe struck. A well-aimed infantry gun shell struck the rocky outcrop just to the Stuart's left. The explosion sheared off the head of the .30 caliber barrel and sent a fist-sized chunk of rock crashing into the turret ring. The turret traverse mechanism jammed, frozen at the 11 o'clock position. They could now only aim by physically turning the entire tank. Their one tactical advantage, mobility, was critically hampered. "Chick, you're the turret now," Hinson said, his voice hoarse. "Pappy, talk him onto target. Left hand down, stop. Right hand slow, stop." The fight descended into a bizarre slow-motion ballet. Sickon would edge the tank left or right, tracks grinding, until Holloway, his world reduced to the narrow field of his fixed gun sight, would call on. They fired. Then Sickon would maneuver blindly to dodge the inevitable return fire that came seconds later. A 75 Panzer round finally found them, striking the front slope at an angle. The impact was like being inside a struck church bell. The crew was thrown against their stations, ears bleeding. Miraculously, the angled armor deflected the shot, leaving a deep silver scar but not a breach. The shock, however, disabled their radio for good. They were now utterly alone. The afternoon wore on in a nightmarish blur of heat, thirst, and concussion. They conserved their 37 ammunition, now down to a dozen rounds, using the coaxial machine gun to keep infantry at bay. They were no longer trying to win, they were trying to last. The German advance, intended as a rapid, crushing blow, had been stalled for over 8 hours by a single, stubborn light tank. As the sun began to dip toward the Mediterranean, painting the sky in oranges and purples, the nature of the German attack changed. The sounds of engines revved, not forward, but in reverse. The artillery fire slackened, then ceased. Peering through his periscope, Hinson saw the reason. To the north, along the coast, a dust cloud was visible. The main American line, reinforced by naval gunfire and elements of the 3rd Infantry Division, had solidified and was now pushing forward. The Hermann Goering Division's counterattack, blunted and delayed at this insignificant ridge, was being called off to meet this new, greater threat. The Panzers were withdrawing. At 17:23, 11 hours after the first shot, the battlefield fell into an eerie quiet, broken only by the crackle of burning wrecks and the moans of the wounded. The crew of Hinson's Hassel sat in their metal coffin, too exhausted to speak, listening to the distant rumble of German armor moving away. They had not won a battle. They had bought time. In doing so, they had helped ensure the beachhead at Gela and the entire Allied foothold in Sicily would hold. The squirrel rifle had, against all odds, guarded the nest.